Rain poured over the city like a curtain of silver, blurring the harsh neon lights into streaks of color. On the corner of a quiet street, beneath a flickering street lamp, a woman sat on the cold pavement. Her arms were wrapped around a small boy, no older than 6. His lips trembled as he leaned against her chest, his tiny hands clutching the edge of her torn shawl. "Mommy, I'm hungry," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm. She smiled weakly, brushing his damp hair aside. "I know, baby, just a little longer." Her name was Lena, and once she had a job, a home, and dreams. But one cruel twist of fate. The company she worked for shut down, her husband left, and the rent bills piled up, had reduced her life to a cardboard box and hope that never seemed to come. That night, desperate and trembling, she wandered toward a luxury restaurant, a place where laughter echoed through glass walls and the scent of roasted lamb filled the air. She stood at the back entrance, watching waiters toss out untouched plates of food into large silver bins. Gathering her courage, she approached the chef. "Sir, please, could I take some leftovers? My son hasn't eaten since yesterday." The man frowned, his eyes cold. "We're not allowed to give food away. Leave before the manager sees you." She bowed her head, muttering an apology, her heart sinking deeper with every step. But as she turned away, a sleek black car pulled up near the entrance. The driver hurried out and opened the door. From it stepped a man in a tailored suit, tall and composed, holding an umbrella. His eyes caught the sight of the woman and the child beside her. The billionaire, Ethan Cole, owner of Cole Enterprises, was known for his ruthless business sense and unmatched wealth. But tonight, his gaze softened as he saw the boy's frail frame and the woman's shaking hands. Something stirred within him, a memory, faint but sharp, of a time when he too had known hunger. He stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said gently. Lena froze. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to bother anyone. We were just leaving." "Wait," Ethan replied, his voice calm yet commanding. He looked down at the boy, then back at her. "Have you eaten?" She shook her head, embarrassed. "No, sir. We're fine. Please don't call security." Ethan turned to his driver. "Tell the manager to prepare a full meal. Hot soup, bread, something warm for the boy." The driver blinked, surprised. "Yes, Mr. Cole." Minutes later, the mother and her son were seated inside the luxurious restaurant, their clothes dripping rainwater onto the marble floor. Waiters moved swiftly, serving steaming plates before them, though some couldn't hide their disapproval. Lena could barely hold back tears as she watched her son eat, his eyes wide with joy. "Say thank you to the man, sweetheart," she whispered. "Thank you, sir," the boy said between bites. Ethan smiled faintly. "You're welcome, little man." But as Lena ate, she couldn't shake the feeling of shame that wrapped around her heart. "I don't deserve this," she murmured. "You've already done more than anyone ever has." Ethan studied her quietly. "Everyone deserves a chance," he said. "What happened to you?" She hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I used to work at a textile company. It closed down. I tried to find other jobs, but no one wants to hire someone who brings a child to interviews. I lost our home last month." Ethan leaned back, his mind racing. He recognized the company's name. He had bought it years ago, shut it down when profits dropped. And now, before him, sat a woman whose life had been destroyed by one of his decisions. A knot formed in his chest. "That company," he said slowly, "it was under my firm. I'm—" Before he could finish, the boy tugged at his sleeve. "Mister, can I take some food for later? Mommy doesn't eat much." Ethan's throat tightened. He nodded, signaling a waiter to pack everything. But in his mind, something had already shifted. When they finished, he walked them out to his car. "Where are you staying tonight?" he asked. Lena looked away. "There's a shelter nearby, but it's full most nights. We'll find somewhere." Ethan was silent for a moment, staring at the glistening puddles on the ground. Then, in a voice firm yet gentle, he said, "No, you're not sleeping on the street again." She frowned in confusion. "What do you mean?" He opened the car door. "Get in, both of you." She hesitated. "Sir, I can't." "Please," he said, his tone softening. Just trust me. Reluctantly, she climbed in, clutching her son close as the car pulled away into the night. She didn't know where he was taking them or why this stranger cared. But for the first time in months, she felt something she had forgotten how to feel. Hope. Ethan's mansion stood at the edge of the city, glowing in the rain like a palace. When the car stopped, Lena gasped. We can't go in there, she said, trembling. You can, Ethan replied, at least for tonight. As the massive doors opened, warm light spilled over the marble steps. Servants stared in shock as their employer entered with a soaked woman and child. Prepare a room, Ethan ordered simply. Lena clutched her son, her heart pounding. Why are you doing this for us? Ethan looked at her, really looked, and said, because once someone helped me when I was nothing. Maybe it's time I do the same. But what neither of them knew was that this single act of kindness would change both their lives forever. The rain had stopped by the time Lena stood at the threshold of Ethan Cole's mansion. The warmth inside felt almost unreal. Soft golden light spilling across polished floors, the faint scent of jasmine drifting from the hall, the quiet hum of servants moving about. She held her son's hand tightly, afraid that if she blinked, the moment would dissolve like mist. A woman in a black uniform approached, her posture stiff. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice hesitant. Should I prepare a guest room in the east wing? Yes, Ethan said, removing his coat. And bring something warm for them to change into. Also, hot chocolate for the boy. The housekeeper nodded, though her eyes lingered on Lena with mild suspicion before disappearing up the staircase. Lena looked around in disbelief. The chandelier above glittered like stars. The velvet couches seemed untouched, and every wall was lined with art worth more than anything she had ever owned. She swallowed hard, her voice breaking. Sir, this is too much. We can't stay here. Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. You can and you will. It's just for tonight, until I figure something out. Her son tugged at her sleeve, pointing toward the massive piano in the corner. Mommy, look, it's so shiny. Ethan smiled faintly. You play? The boy shook his head. No, but I like the sound. Ethan crouched beside him. Maybe I'll show you tomorrow. Deal. The boy's face lit up, his eyes wide. Really? Really? Lena watched the exchange silently, her throat tightening. It had been months since she'd seen her son smile that way, pure, unguarded, filled with wonder. She turned away, wiping the tears before anyone could see. Later that night, after a bath and a change of clothes, her son fell asleep on the softest bed he had ever known. Lena stood by the window, the silk curtains brushing her arm, staring at the city lights in the distance. She couldn't understand any of it, why this man, this billionaire, had taken him in. The sound of footsteps drew her attention. Ethan stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, holding 2 cups of tea. Couldn't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. I'm just not used to quiet places anymore. He handed her the cup. Then talk. Tell me about you. She hesitated, clutching the warm porcelain between her palms. There's not much to tell. I was married once. He left when things got hard. I worked wherever I could, cleaning, cooking, sewing. But once the company shut down, no one wanted to hire a woman with a child. After that, it was just survival. Ethan leaned against the window frame, his gaze thoughtful. That company, he paused, choosing his words carefully. It used to belong to one of my subsidiaries. I never realized the consequences of closing it. She looked up, startled. You mean you owned it? He nodded slowly. Indirectly, yes. It wasn't personal. It was business. A faint bitterness colored her voice. Business, she repeated, her fingers tightening on the cup. That word has ruined more lives than hunger. Ethan didn't reply. The silence between them grew heavy, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock. He looked at her, the way exhaustion and strength coexisted in her face, and felt something shift inside him, something unfamiliar. Guilt, perhaps, or empathy. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I can't undo what happened, but maybe I can make things right. She met his eyes, her tone guarded. People like me don't expect miracles, Mr. Cole. We just hope to make it through the next day. Then let me help with that, he said, simply. I'll find you a place, a job, something permanent. Her breath caught. Why? You don't even know me. He took a slow sip of tea. Maybe I should. For a moment, neither spoke. The room felt suspended in a strange calm, the world outside forgotten. When Lena finally turned back toward her sleeping son, Ethan lingered a little longer at the doorway, watching her with quiet intrigue. There was something about her, not just her resilience, but the quiet dignity she carried despite the weight of everything she'd lost. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the mansion through tall windows. Lena awoke to the sound of laughter, her son's laughter. She rushed out, startled, and found him sitting beside Ethan at the piano. Ethan's fingers danced across the keys, the melody soft and bright. The boy watched in awe, clapping when the tune ended. Again, he begged. Ethan chuckled. All right, one more time. Lena stood in the doorway, speechless. For a moment, it felt as though time had reversed. Her son no longer the hungry, frightened child of yesterday, but a boy with light in his eyes again. When Ethan noticed her, he smiled. Good morning. I hope you don't mind. Your son insisted on music before breakfast. I don't mind, she said softly. He hasn't laughed like that in months. Breakfast was served in a sunlit dining room where golden rays touched everything. The table overflowed with fruit, bread, and fresh juice. Lena felt overwhelmed just looking at it. This could feed 10 families, she murmured. Then eat for 10, Ethan said lightly. As they ate, a knock at the door interrupted them. Ethan's assistant entered, holding a tablet. Sir, the board meeting is in 30 minutes, and a charity gala proposal. Ethan raised a hand. Postpone it. The assistant blinked. Sir, I said postpone it. I have something more important to handle. Lena frowned. Please, don't change your schedule for us. But Ethan only smiled. Some things can wait. When the assistant left, Ethan turned back to her. You said you worked with textiles, right? Yes, she said cautiously. I used to design small patterns. Simple ones, nothing special. Show me, he said. She hesitated. But later that afternoon, with a borrowed pencil and a blank sheet, she began to draw. Her hands trembled at first, rusty from months of struggle. But soon, delicate shapes began to emerge, elegant, flowing designs that carried quiet beauty. Ethan watched in silence, genuinely impressed. You call this nothing special? He said finally. These are incredible. She flushed, embarrassed. It's just something I used to do. He leaned forward. Lena, I'm serious. You have real talent. My company's launching a new fashion division. We could use someone like you. Her eyes widened. You'd hire me? I'd be foolish not to. Before she could respond, her son ran in holding a small toy car one of the servants had given him. Mommy, look, he said, grinning ear to ear. She smiled through tears. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Ethan watched them, mother and child, light and laughter slowly returning to their faces, and felt something unfamiliar tug at his heart. He wasn't used to caring this way, not after years of boardrooms, deals, and a life built on control. But Lena's presence had begun to melt something he didn't realize had frozen long ago. That night, when the mansion grew quiet again, he stood in his study, staring out at the city skyline. He had wealth, power, everything people envied. Yet none of it had ever made him feel as alive as watching a hungry boy smile or seeing gratitude in a mother's eyes. A soft knock came at the door. It was Lena. I wanted to thank you, she said quietly, for everything. You didn't have to do any of this. He turned to her, his gaze steady. Maybe I needed to. For a moment they stood there, two souls from different worlds, bound by fate's strange kindness. Neither spoke again, but something unspoken passed between them. A promise. A beginning. Outside, the city lights shimmered like stars scattered across the earth, and inside that vast, silent mansion, lives that had once been broken began, quietly, to mend. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slipped into months. What had begun as a single act of compassion grew into something deeper, something neither Ethan nor Lena had expected. The mansion, once a silent fortress of wealth and solitude, had come alive. The faint sound of laughter would sometimes echo from the garden, where Lena's son, now more lively and confident, chased butterflies through rows of trimmed hedges. The staff, who once looked at Lena with skepticism, had grown fond of her gentle nature. She treated everyone with kindness, thanked even the smallest gestures, and never once acted entitled to her new life. But Lena refused to become complacent. True to her word, she worked hard. Ethan had placed her in his company's new design division, and within weeks, her creativity began to draw attention. The patterns she created, inspired by her struggles and her dreams, carried emotion, something rare in the corporate world of fashion. One afternoon, Ethan walked into the design studio, his gaze scanning the board filled with her sketches. "You've transformed this department," he said, genuinely impressed. "The clients love your work." Lena smiled, though her eyes carried humility. "It's not just me. I just put my heart into what I do." Ethan studied her quietly. "That's exactly what I've forgotten how to do," he admitted. Her laughter was soft. "Maybe you just needed a reminder." Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, something passed between them. Something warm, real, and terrifying. But as much as she admired Ethan's generosity, a small voice inside her reminded her the truth. This wasn't her world. The mansion, the luxury, the polished smiles, they weren't meant for someone who once begged for leftovers behind a restaurant. One evening, as the sun melted into gold behind the city skyline, Lena stood in the garden, watching her son play. She turned as she heard footsteps behind her. Ethan approached, hands in his pockets, his expression thoughtful. "You've been quiet lately," he said. She hesitated. "I've been thinking." About leaving." He froze. "Leaving?" She nodded slowly. "You've already done so much for us. I can't stay here forever, Ethan. I need to stand on my own again. My son deserves to see his mother strong, not dependent on anyone's kindness." His chest tightened at her words. He wanted to argue, to tell her she didn't have to leave, but the sincerity in her eyes stopped him. "And where would you go?" "I've saved enough from the job. There's a small apartment not far from here. It's not much, but it's ours." Ethan looked away, the weight of her decision pressing down on him. "You've changed this place," he said quietly. "You've changed me." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's all I was meant to do." The next morning, the mansion felt hollow. Her absence was like a missing heartbeat. Her laughter no longer filled the halls, and her son's voice no longer echoed up the staircase. Ethan went to his office, but nothing felt right. The boardroom conversations were dull. The meetings felt empty. He caught himself staring out the window more often, wondering what she was doing, whether she was happy, whether she missed him too. Weeks passed. One evening, he received an invitation to a charity exhibition hosted downtown, a showcase of emerging designers from his company. When he arrived, the room buzzed with applause and flashing cameras. And then, at the center of it all, he saw her. Lena stood on stage, radiant in a simple white dress, her designs displayed behind her, patterns inspired by hope, resilience, and rebirth. A banner above read asterisk, "From the streets to the stars, the journey of Lena Moore." Asterisk. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She spotted him among the crowd, the shock in her eyes quickly replaced by a warm, trembling smile. After the event, as guests congratulated her, she walked toward him slowly. "You came," she said softly. "I wouldn't miss it," he replied. "You were extraordinary." "It still doesn't feel real," she whispered. "Sometimes I wake up thinking I'm still on that street corner, begging for scraps." He shook his head. "You were never just a beggar. Lena, you were always extraordinary. The world just didn't see it yet." She looked up at him, tears glimmering in her eyes. "You saw it. Maybe because I saw myself in you," he said quietly. "I built walls so high I forgot what kindness looked like until you walked into my life." For a long moment, they stood there in silence, surrounded by the chatter and music of the gala. Then Lena's son ran up, holding a small trophy in his hands. "Mr. Cole, look, Mommy won." Ethan smiled and knelt to the boy's height. "I told you your mom was amazing." The boy grinned. "She's the best." Ethan looked at Lena again, his voice softer now. He's right. That night, as the lights dimmed and the guests began to leave, Ethan walked her outside. The city shimmered around them, rain once again falling gently, like it had the night they first met. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked quietly. "Every day," he admitted. "It was a night everything changed." She laughed lightly. "I almost didn't go to that restaurant. I almost gave up. And if you had, then I'd never have met the man who reminded me that kindness still exists." Ethan stepped closer, his gaze steady but tender. "Lena, when you left the mansion, I thought I was doing you a favor by letting you go. But I realized something. I wasn't helping you find your strength. You were showing me mine." Her breath caught as she looked into his eyes. "Ethan, I don't want to go back to the emptiness I had before you," he continued. "And I don't want you to face the world alone again. Not because you need me, but because I need you." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know if I fit in your world." He smiled gently. "Then I'll make a new one where you do." The rain fell harder, but neither moved. For the first time, the billionaire who had everything and the woman who once had nothing stood as equals. Two souls who had found light in each other's darkness. Time passed, and their story became one the world couldn't stop talking about. The media called it The Billionaire and the Beggar Mother, a modern fairy tale that wasn't about wealth or status, but about humanity. Ethan and Lena didn't care for the attention. They lived quietly, choosing substance over spectacle. Lena continued designing, her work now recognized globally for its message of hope. Every stitch, every pattern carried a piece of her journey. The streets, the hunger, the kindness that changed everything. Her son grew into a bright young boy, confident and loved, often seen helping his mother in her studio, while Ethan watched with quiet pride. The mansion, once filled with silence, now echoed with laughter, warmth, and music. One late evening, as the three of them sat together on the terrace, the city below glittering like a sea of stars, Lena turned to Ethan. "Do you ever wonder why you stopped that night?" He smiled, eyes soft. "Because something told me that if I didn't, I'd lose the best thing that would ever happen to me." She leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart finally at peace. In the distance, thunder rolled softly, but the storm no longer frightened her. It was just rain. The same rain that once soaked her when she was lost. The same rain that led her to him. As the night deepened, Ethan whispered, "You know, Lena, sometimes fate doesn't knock. Sometimes it stands in the rain, waiting for someone to notice." She smiled through tears. "And you noticed." He took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "How could I not?" The city lights shimmered, the world around them hushed, and in that perfect stillness, it became clear that their story wasn't about pity or luck. It was about transformation, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of despair, compassion could spark miracles, and love could rise from places no one expected. Because once, a homeless mother had begged for leftovers to feed her child, and a billionaire, haunted by the emptiness of his own heart, had chosen to listen. That single choice had rewritten both their destinies. And somewhere in that soft rain, under the golden lights of the city, their story continued, not as a tale of wealth and poverty, but as proof that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can become the beginning of something magnificent.